I knew something was wrong the moment my tires touched the old gravel road. MC1, the place where my father's wooden entry post used to stand, had been replaced by a steel gate, big enough to guard a bank vault, and behind it, a woman in a charcoal gray tracksuit, studying a clipboard like she owned the horizon. Problem landed fast. That gate was on my land. Pain followed even faster. Someone had decided to control the valley my father spent his life guarding. Promise simmered in the back of my throat. They were about to learn they'd pushed the wrong son. She raised her hand as if stopping traffic. "This is a regulated community," she said. Her tone was clipped, precise, like she'd practiced it in a mirror. "Access is restricted without HOA authorization." HOA authorization. On my father's land, I leaned out the window, holding the deed I'd picked up from the courthouse just 2 weeks earlier. "Ma'am, this road leads to my cabin." Her jaw tightened. A quick blink, then another. Classic sign of someone scrambling to maintain authority. A breeze nudged pine needles across the hood of my truck. For a moment I felt Dad beside me. The way he'd stand with one hand on his hip, watching storms roll between ridges. "Easy, son. Let truth do the heavy lifting." I steadied my breath. "I don't see your registration on file," she said, glancing at her clipboard again. "You'll need to apply for temporary access. Could take a week." My pulse thumped in my ears. A week? To reach my own cabin? My hand tightened on the steering wheel. Something very wrong had taken root here. "Open the gate," I said, keeping my voice steady. Calm, porch narrator steady. She didn't move. Her lips did the smallest twitch, as kind people do when they think they've won. Before I could speak again, a young guard stepped out of a booth I hadn't noticed. His uniform still had creases in it. He looked at me the way rookies look at manuals they don't fully understand. "Sir," he said, "the HOA requires a permit to enter common grounds." Common grounds. That phrase hit me like a hammer. My father's voice echoed inside me. "This valley is ours. Every inch, every ridge." And now these strangers were calling it common grounds. I handed the guard the deed. He squinted at it long enough to prove he wasn't absorbing a word printed on ITAN, stepped aside to make a call. Inside my chest, anger was heating like a stove burner, but grief still sat heavier. Dad had been gone only for months. I'd taken too long to come home. And in that silence, they'd made their move. He returned with the stiffness of someone following orders. "You're allowed to proceed," he said, "but only to your structure." Structure. Not home, not cabin. Structure. The gate hissed open. I drove through slow, watching the guard write my plate number as if I were trespassing. Trees swallowed the road ahead, their shadows stretching long like warning fingers. The valley always smelled like home cold water, old cedar, dust warmed by sun. Today there was something else in the air. Intrusion. When the cabin finally came into view, my chest tightened. Dad's old rocking chair sat on the porch, still pointed toward the creek bend he loved. His reading glasses were visible through the front window. His jacket still hung by the door. The empty space where his truck should have been made, the whole valley feel hollow. I stepped inside. Wood floor creaked under my boots in the exact rhythm I remembered. Dust caught in a sunbeam drifting through the room. I touched Dad's jacket and closed my eyes. "I'm here, old man. I'm finally here." Then something shifted, subtle, but wrong. The basement door was cracked open. Dad was meticulous about that door. Always shut. Always latched. Somehow, that small gap felt louder than the gate outside. A sliver of cold air rose from below, earthy damp. Familiar, but disturbed. The stairs groaned as I descended. My hand brushed the stone, while cool and rough, like always. The basement was cluttered with old boxes, sawdust, rusted tools, but in the far corner, near the foundation, something unfamiliar sat under a sheet. A trunk, dark wood. Iron straps. Carved initials that time hadn't erased. DL 1902. A chill ran up my spine. I'd never seen it before. My internal voice whispered. Dad knew something was coming. I lifted the lid. Hinges squealed in protest. Inside lay rolled papers sealed in wax. Brittle ledgers wrapped in cloth, and a folded map with careful ink lines marking the entire valley. Every ridge, every waterway, every acre, and then I saw it handwritten on the bottom corner, full rights granted in perpetuity. My throat tightened. My heartbeat thudded. Mineral rights, water rights, land rights. Everything the HOA outside wasn't just mistaken. They were trespassing on 5 generations of legacy, and someone had already stepped into the cabin today. Footsteps crunched outside. I froze. Slow. Deliberate steps crossed the porch, expensive. Shoes by the sound, confident, familiar with taking what wasn't theirs. I climbed the stairs with the map in my hand. When I opened the door, she was inside my living room, the same woman from the gate. Her eyes drifted over Dad's possessions like she was appraising items at an estate sale. She forced a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "You must be the new occupant," she said. Her tone softened only enough to sound rehearsed. "I'm Marlene, president of the Valley Summit HOA. I didn't take her hand." She noticed. Her jaw tightened again. She moved to the table, placing a thick binder beside my map. "Our community has standards," she said, "and your structure needs adjustments." My blood warmed. She doesn't know what she's standing on. I set the map between us. Her face stiffened. "Before we talk about standards," I said, "tell me who gave you permission to build a gate on Dalton land." Her blink rate doubled. Then she forced another smile. "Oh," she said softly, "we'll be discussing that soon." She walked out without waiting for a response. The screen door clicked shut. I watched her leave, the binder she'd dropped still sitting on my table. Inside were fines, restrictions, access rules, and a note labeling my cabin as a temporary permitted structure. A temporary. On land older than her entire subdivision, my fingers curled around the map. "Dad, you tried to warn me." This wasn't paperwork. This was a takeover in progress. Legacy isn't protected by memory alone. Sometimes it takes a living voice to guard what the dead left behind. When the screen door stopped rattling behind Marlene, the whole cabin felt smaller. MC1, her perfume still hung in the air, sharp and synthetic, like someone trying to cover rot with lavender. She'd walked across my father's living room like she belonged here, like she'd earned it. But the map on my table, that changed everything. And she had no idea how badly. I unrolled the parchment again. The lines were inked with the kind of precision you don't see today, every ridge drawn by someone who walked them. The signature at the bottom matched the carved initials on the trunk. Dalton land. Full rights. In perpetuity, a phrase that was older than any HOA rulebook. Outside, gravel shifted small, cautious steps. My eyes flicked to the window. A man stood near the creek, pretending to look at the water while glancing toward the cabin. Snooping already? Good, it told me exactly how nervous Marlene had become. I locked the map away in Dad's tool chest, tucked the trunk back into the corner, and grabbed my coat. I needed answers, and the county records office was the one place these people couldn't rewrite history. The road down the valley felt different today. The pines leaned in close, branches brushing the truck like they were whispering warnings. Halfway down, a new sign caught my fresh paint. Plastic sheen, HOA, surveillance area, all activities monitored. My stomach tightened. Marlene wasn't just enforcing rules. She was building control at the base of the hill, another gate smaller. But just as out of place blocked the old Forest Service trail, my father used to take me there to watch deer in the fall. Now, a padlock hung from a chain like some kind of dare. I took a photo. Dad always said, if it looks wrong, document it. The county office sat across from the courthouse, a red brick building that smelled like old paperwork and lemon cleaner. Inside, a clerk with silver glasses glanced up as I approached. "You're the Dalton boy," she said gently. "Your father used to come in here every tax season." The warmth in her voice cracked something inside me. I nodded. "I need everything on the valley. Old deeds, surveys, anything tied to the Dalton name." She smiled knowingly, like she'd been waiting for this day. "Give me a moment." She disappeared through a back door. When she returned, she was pushing a cart loaded with boxers, 3 of them. "Something told me you'd be coming," she said. Inside the first box was a deed older than my grandfather, ink faded, seal intact. The boundaries were identical to the map from the cabin. The second box held water rights filings. The third held geological assessments Dad must have requested decades ago. One sheet made my heart stumble. Confirmed high-grade limestone reserves, area value significant. And he kept it secret because secrets protect land better than fences. As I photographed documents, the clerk lowered her voice. "That HOA? They built fast. Some folks questioned it, but most were too excited about new homes and paved roads. No one asked who owned the ground beneath all that concrete." Her eyes softened. "You should talk to the old county attorney. He retired last year, but he knows these hills better than anyone." I thanked her and stepped outside. Before I reached my truck, a voice called out sharply, "You Dalton?" A man in a tan jacket approached, broad shoulders, face lined by years of mountain sun. His eyes were steady, but something behind them was rattled. "I live in one of those new houses," he said. "Paid every fee they told us to pay. Yesterday I asked for financial records," he swallowed. "They threatened to fine me for harassment." A cold, familiar pressure built behind my ribs. He hesitated. "Look, whatever fight you're starting, don't stop." Some of us knew something wasn't right, but nobody would listen. He slipped a folded paper into my hand and walked off. Inside was a copy of an HOA invoice marked Special Assessment. Emergency Reserve, except the contractor name was missing. No signature. No permit, just a number, $4,800 charged to a single family. They weren't just overstepping. They were draining people dry. I tucked the paper into my pocket. This wasn't just my fight anymore. Back in the truck, I dialed Mom. Her voice was thin, tired, but steadier than it had been weeks ago. "Did your father ever talk about outsiders pressing him?" I asked. Silence drifted down the line. "He told me people would come someday," she whispered. "People who wanted what wasn't theirs. He said if they ever did, you'd know what to do." Her words settled over me like a weight, both heavy and holy. As I climbed back toward the cabin, the air seemed thicker. Shadows stretched longer across the road. Near the bend, a white SUV sat parked on the shoulder. Engine running. Windows tinted. It didn't move. It didn't need to. Its presence sent a message. "We're watching." I pulled into the cabin driveway. The binder Marlene left was still on the table. I opened it again, this time reading with purpose. Pages of fines. Pages of restrictions. Pages of rules meant to exhaust a man until he surrendered the will to fight. Then I reached the last page. A handwritten note, inelegant. Looping script: "If you refuse compliance, we reserve the right to pursue further action." Further action. My palms tingled with heat. The wind rattled the porch boards. The cabin door trembled against its hinges. A thought rose inside, quiet but clear. They're not just claiming this land. They're preparing to take it. And when someone wants to take something this badly, it's never just about control. It's about profit. I snapped my head toward the window. A shadow moved near the wood line, slow, deliberate. Then another. 2 figures walked the boundary of my property, pointing at markers Dad placed 30 years. Goes surveying, planning. the kind of walk men do when they think they already own the place. I stepped outside, boots sinking into soft soil. The men froze. "Problem?" I asked, one of them forced a smirk. "Just doing preliminary inspection? On whose authority?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Fear flickered in his eyes, fear of being caught where he shouldn't be. They walked off fast, leaving the smell of cheap cologne and entitlement behind them. A man can ignore a bully once, but when bullies arrive with clipboards and quiet confidence, you either stand your ground or you lose it forever. I didn't sleep that night. Every time the cabin settled, every time a pine branch tapped the roof, my body jolted awake like the valley was warning me not to close my eyes. Somewhere out there, those two men with clipboards were planning something. And Marlene. She was planning everything else. When dawn finally cracked open the sky, I made a decision. No more reacting. It was time to fight. The air outside was cold enough to sting, the kind of cold that wakes your instincts. I stepped onto the porch with Dad's old thermos in hand. Steam curled upward, disappearing into morning fog. I looked at the valley of the creek, the cedar posts, the ridgeline Dad used to call the backbone. This land wasn't just a place. It was lineage. My phone buzzed. "Unknown number?" I hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Dalton." A woman's voice, firm, official, practiced. "I'm Agent Rayburn with the Regional Environmental Office. We received photos you submitted last night. I'd like to inspect the valley today. Hadn't sent anything." My stomach tightened. Someone else had. "Come," I said. "You'll want to see this." Within 2 hours, a gray government SUV rolled into my driveway. A tall woman in a ranger uniform stepped out, her boots crunching like she was walking through. Lies she already intended to expose. "I'm here about water. Contamination reports," she said. I pointed. "Toward the trail behind the houses below the ridge. Follow the smell, you'll find your culprit." She didn't smile, just nodded and headed down the slope, camera in hand. I followed. Halfway down, she froze. A shallow trench cut through the brush, fresh dirt. PVC pipe, slow trickle of gray water feeding into the creek Dad taught me to fish in. It smelled like chemicals and neglect. The ranger crouched, snapped photos, collected a sample. Her jaw tightened the way people's jaws tighten when they see something that insults common sense. "This is illegal," she muttered. "Very illegal." She traced the pipe uphill. It led straight to one of the new house's HOA property. Her voice dropped. "This alone could shut down their operations," she continued. And the deeper we walked, the worse it got. Overflow pits, unregistered drainage, pipes disguised under gravel. Dad's creek, the one he swore would always run clean, had been turned into a dumping ground. A heat built behind my eyes that wasn't anger, it was something older. Something inherited. The ranger turned to me. "I'll be filing an immediate federal notice." "Your valley's about to get very busy?" Good, my phone buzzed again. "Another unknown number? Is this Beck Dalton?" This voice was older, deeper, worn from decades of courthouse floors. "Harrison Lang," he introduced himself. "Your father and I worked together. He left notes for you." My grip tightened. Dad planned for this. "Where can I meet you?" I asked. "Courthouse. Bring whatever you found." On the drive down, storm clouds brewed over the ridge. The wind rattled the truck bed like it wanted to speak. When I arrived, Harrison was already waiting on the courthouse step stall, lean, white hair combed back like he'd never surrendered to age. "You look like him," he said. I swallowed something sharp in my throat, inside his office. He spread documents across the table, copies Dad had given him before the illness took its grip. Mineral rights, water filings, rejected purchase offers, survey records confirming Dalton ownership for over a century. "You have stronger evidence than most families ever dream of," he said. "But she," He didn't need to say Marlene's name. She's counting on fear to keep you quiet. Slid a sealed letter across the table. Your father's. Handwriting. The shape of it alone punched my lungs. I opened it slowly, the paper crackling like it remembered his hands. If they ever come for the land, don't let them pretend it's theirs. Stand tall. The valley will stand with you. My breath shook. Harrison placed a hand on the table. We can hit back with a cease and desist, a quiet title action, and a formal land claim update. But his tone lowered. She's not going to take it well. That was fine. I wasn't taking anything lightly either. When I reached the valley again, something felt wrong instantly. The white SUV I'd seen yesterday was parked closer. Its engine idled, like a quiet threat. 2 more trucks sat near the boundary marker. Men paced around with maps, measuring tapes, and the arrogance of people who believe the world bends for them. At the center, Marlene, hair perfect. Outfit perfect. Smile artificial enough to crack. She turned when she saw me. We're conducting an improvement survey. My laugh came out low. On whose land? Her eyes flashed. If you continue interfering, we'll escalate. I stepped closer. Escalate to what? More trespassing? That blink again. Fast, defensive. A crack in her armor. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she hissed quietly. You could have joined willingly. Joined what? I asked. She leaned in, tones sweet as poison. A community with real value. Land with real worth. That was the truth behind her mask. She didn't care about rules. She cared about profit. Behind her, one of the men accidentally revealed a clipboard. I saw numbers. Big ones. Projected valuations. Limestone estimates. My heart pounded. They knew. Not everything, but enough. I grabbed the clipboard. The man tried to snatch it back, but I held it firm. This isn't a survey, I said. This is a takeover. Marlene's composure shattered. Put that down. No. Her cheeks colored with rage. Her voice dropped to a whisper of venom. You have no idea who we've partnered with. A chill slid down my spine. Who is we? Before I could speak, someone shouted from down the road. Federal officer. Step away from the property line. The ranger was back with backup. 2 more SUVs rolled in behind her. Marlene's men stiffened. She straightened her jacket like dignity could be stitched back on. The ranger addressed her directly. We have evidence of environmental violations on your developments. You are ordered to cease all construction activities immediately. The word violations echoed across the valley. Neighbors stepped out of their houses. People gathered. Whispers turned into waves of realization. Marlene's perfect composure faltered. Her voice cracked. This is a misunderstanding. It's federal, the ranger said. Misunderstandings don't come with fines like these. The crowd murmured for the first time. I wasn't alone. The valley was watching her. And standing with me, Marlene looked at me with a mixture of fury and fear. This isn't over. No, I said softly. It's finally beginning. When you stand up to people who steal with confidence, you don't just defend land, you remind a whole community they still have a voice.